When you study history deeply enough, a realization begins to take root. A third eye opens to the invisible web of misogyny that has shaped societies across time. Suddenly, you see the same patterns of oppression repeating across cultures, and it becomes impossible to ignore. As you sift through the stories of ancient civilizations, medieval societies, and modern nations, you notice something unsettling. No matter the place or time, women have been systematically devalued, silenced, and oppressed. And once this third eye opens, there's no turning back. This insight, however, comes with a heavy burden. You start to notice misogyny in every part of life, from casual conversations to larger societal structures. And while it's glaringly obvious to you, it feels like you're one of the few people who can actually see it. You look around at the world and wonder, why aren't more people talking about this? Why doesn't everyone else see what I see? At first, studying different cultures and historical eras feels like an exciting journey through human diversity. Every society offers its own unique customs and traditions. But the more you learn, the more you realize how disturbingly similar they all are when it comes to the treatment of women. No matter where or when you look, women have been denied power, autonomy, and respect. This pattern is not isolated, it's universal. In ancient Rome, women were confined to the domestic sphere, denied political power, and treated as property. In pre-modern China, the practice of foot binding symbolized the control men had over women's bodies, forcing them into submission. In medieval Europe, women were seen as intellectually and morally inferior, their roles reduced to serving men and bearing children. Even in indigenous cultures, which are often romanticized for their egalitarianism, women were frequently subjected to violence and subjugation. Despite vast differences in geography, religion, and societal structure, the same narrative repeats itself. Men hold power, and women are oppressed. This realization opens your third eye. You begin to understand that misogyny isn't just a historical relic. It's a deep-rooted global phenomenon that transcends time and culture. It's the invisible fabric that holds up patriarchal systems across the world. And now that you see it, you can't unsee it. Once your third eye opens, you start noticing misogyny in places you hadn't before, both in the past and the present. It's in the jokes told at family gatherings, the way women are interrupted in meetings, the pay gap that persists across industries, and the way media constantly scrutinizes women's bodies. You realize that these aren't just isolated incidents, they're all connected to the same historical patterns of control and subjugation. But as you see more clearly, the world around you seems increasingly oblivious. Many of the women in your life might not share the same level of awareness, going about their daily lives without questioning these invisible systems. Men, too, often seem uninterested in acknowledging how deeply rooted misogyny is. This leaves you feeling isolated in your insight, as if you're living in two parallel worlds, one where the truth is painfully clear, and another where people remain blissfully unaware. It can feel maddening. You start to wonder if you're overreacting, if perhaps you're the one seeing things that aren't really there. But deep down, you know that's not true. You've studied enough, learned enough, and seen enough to understand the truth. Misogyny is deeply embedded in society, and most people just don't notice. The burden of this knowledge can be overwhelming, especially when you realize how few others are willing to confront it. The third eye may offer clarity, but it also carries a heavy burden. You can't simply close it and return to ignorance. Everywhere you go, you see the ways in which patriarchy continues to shape society, often in subtle but powerful ways. It's in the way women's achievements are often minimized or attributed to luck, while men are praised for their hard work. It's in the way women's bodies are objectified and controlled through laws, media, and social norms. It's in the casual remarks, the institutional biases, and the everyday interactions that reinforce the belief that men are superior. And yet, most people around you don't see it. They either don't notice or choose not to. You hear people say, "We've made so much progress," or "Women have equal rights now," and you wonder if they're looking at the same world you are. Because while things have improved on the surface, the deeper structures of patriarchy remain largely intact. The system has evolved, but the roots are still there. This realization can be isolating. You start to feel like you're carrying a secret that no one else wants to hear. You see the systems of control, the subtle ways women are still kept in their place, but when you try to talk about it, you're met with blank stares or dismissive comments. People don't want to believe that misogyny is still so deeply ingrained in society, especially in modern, progressive societies. But your third eye sees through the facade, and it's a lonely place to be. Having your third eye open means you can never again look at the world without seeing the structures of misogyny that underpin it. It's like living with a constant filter that reveals the inequality hidden beneath everyday life. And while it's empowering to see the truth, it's also a heavy burden to carry. You can't go back to ignorance, but at the same time, you feel alienated from those who don't share your understanding. You start to wonder why more people don't recognize these patterns. Why aren't they angry? Why aren't they demanding change? The answer is complicated. For some, ignorance is bliss. For others, there's a sense of denial. They don't want to believe that such deeply rooted inequalities still exist. And for many men, the status quo benefits them, so there's little incentive to challenge it. The burden of knowledge is real. You see what others don't, and that can make you feel like an outsider in your own world. But you also know that this third eye is a gift, because without it, you'd be just as blind as everyone else. Opening your third eye to the patterns of misogyny across time and culture means seeing the world in all its harsh, oppressive reality. It's a powerful, necessary insight, but it's also a lonely one. Once you've learned the history of how women were treated and how those systems still persist, you realize that few people are willing to confront the truth. Misogyny isn't just a relic of the past, it's embedded in the present, and it shapes the future. And while it's painful to carry this knowledge, it's also a gift. You may feel isolated in your awareness, but you're not alone. There are others who see it too, even if they're few and far between. Together, you can start to unravel the invisible threads of oppression one small step at a time. And once your third eye opens, it can never close again.